The man would feed this flea every day, and the flea had already almost grown as big as a goat. At first, the flea was still very small. The king wanted to squash it, but unexpectedly, the flea was exceptionally obedient. It jumped back and forth on his hand according to the king's thoughts. The king found it fascinating. He caught the flea in his hand, then left the palace and returned to his bedchamber. The king pricked his finger with a quill pen, then let the flea suck his blood. Then the king put the flea in a crystal box and curiously observed it with a magnifying glass. After feeding the flea with his own blood for a few days, the flea actually grew to the size of a soybean. In order to take care of the flea, the king shut himself in his room all day, using various parts to make toys for the flea. The next night, when the king and the princess were eating dinner, the princess noticed the meat on the plate wasn't cooked through, and there was still a lot of blood in the meat. The king suddenly thought of something. He directly picked up the plate and returned to his bedchamber. At his call, the flea crawled out from under the bed, but the king didn't expect the flea had actually already grown to about the size of a lamb. The king fed the half-cooked roast meat to the flea, then stroked its back. A few nights later, the king summoned the doctor to his bedchamber. It turned out the flea had fallen ill. When he saw this big fellow, the doctor was terrified, but at the king's urging, the doctor still approached. However, the doctor had no idea how to treat a flea. He was powerless against the flea's illness. So before dawn, the flea died. The king was heartbroken. The next day, the king summoned the princess to his bedchamber. He wanted to find the princess a husband, but he would have to pass the king's test first in order to become her husband. But the next test would disappoint the princess.